Got big breaking news off the top here on lots of fronts. We've actually got some bombshell reporting and big-time finger-pointing in the case of little Emmanuel Haro, who's been missing and now is presumed dead for at least 13 days and maybe as many as 22. Wait until you hear what the authorities say his father claims happened to that little baby. In fact, all of the different versions of what he's apparently said about that baby from jail. We'll have that for you in just a moment, but we want to begin with the very latest update from Minneapolis, the latest on the situation, the shooting, the horrible shooting at the Annunciation Church, where, as you know, a gunman opened fire through the windows of that church as dozens of school children were gathering for the first Mass to kick off classes at the school next door. 2 kids aged 8 and 10 were killed. 17 more victims were injured and rushed to the hospital. 2 of the wounded children are in critical condition tonight. The adults who were shot are all in their 80s. The shooter, now identified as 23-year-old Robin Westman, an alum of that school, the Annunciation Catholic School, was armed with a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol, and took his own life in the parking lot outside. Of the 19 people who were shot, 16 of them were children. Our Brian Entin is live in Minneapolis with much more. He's at the scene. Brian, the injured kids, 2 in critical, I keep wondering if they're going to be okay. Do we have an update?
Yeah, the latest from police, Ashleigh, is they expect everyone ultimately will be okay that's still in the hospital. Granted, the injuries are still serious, and they're children at that. But the police chief did say they expect all of them to recover. But it's just so heartbreaking. I mean, I just heard a woman crying behind me. I mean, the church, the school is just on the block behind me, and it's just terrible. I mean, this gunman actually showed up 8:30 this morning and then started shooting through the windows. And you mentioned it, there was an 8 and a 10-year-old. It was their second day of school, Ashleigh. Their second day of school. They were in Mass, and an 8 and a 10-year-old were killed.
So what is the latest information that the police have on who this person was and why he would do this at a church, to shoot through the windows?
Yeah, so those pieces are starting to come together. The shooter has been identified, and you said it as Robin Westman, and it's a little confusing because Robin Westman used to be Robert Westman before changing from Robert to Robin, and you can see the picture there. And police say that the shooter actually went to the school, graduated from the school, back when the shooter was 17 years old, now 23 years old. The shooter's mother, we know at one point, worked at the school, so very much had a connection to the school. And then also there was this manifesto that was located on YouTube. It's since been taken down, Ashleigh, but it sort of provided a window into just how disturbed the shooter was going into this.
And we're just seeing on the screen, Brian, the manifesto apparently on YouTube. The shooter was allegedly leafing through copies in this manifesto. Not only that, but writing things on the gun, apparently. Where is your God? For the children. Kill Donald Trump. Ha, 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 ha. Is there anything more to this manifesto?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously there's the messages there for the children, the kill Donald Trump, things that I didn't even really get clapped there, things that I didn't even really understand what they rip and tear, what they meant. But there's actually a video. I watched the video. They've taken it down, but you can still find it some places. I don't suggest watching it because it's disturbing. But these are actually still images from parts of the video, and he is just clearly just deranged, sick. Many people would say evil, and it's disturbing to watch the whole thing.
All right, well, Brian, throughout the course of the show, if you get an update on anything new from the police, just break in. But I don't want to let you go because I want to unpack your latest reporting on the presumed murder of 7-month-old Emmanuel Haro in Southern California. You've broken some incredible information about the baby's father, who, like his mother, is charged with killing him. Apparently, he's told a few versions of what happened to the baby from jail. Can you catch us up to speed on everything you've learned?
Yeah, Ashleigh, so I've learned through sources that Jake Haro, baby Emmanuel's father, told police that he accidentally rolled over in bed, this is what sources are telling me, and accidentally killed baby Emmanuel, and then buried baby Emmanuel in a place so that he could go there to grieve him, which obviously made no sense. But when you think back to the weekend, Ashleigh, when police were out searching with Jake Haro in the jumpsuit, they had him out there, very unusual to see that, right along the freeway there in that area. It lines up with the story from my sources that he had indicated, and he's had a couple of stories, which I'll get into, but with this story, that he had indicated to police that he buried baby Emmanuel after accidentally killing him.
So the other question I have for you is the second story. The first story was he tells the police he's rolled over on the baby and buries the baby's body out on, near the highway, clearly leading to those pictures. But then there's a second version of Jake Haro speaking in jail. What did you learn about this?
Yeah, and this is very interesting. So sources tell me that there was something called a Perkins operation, which is not unusual in California. And this is when either an undercover police officer, or not a police officer, but an informant, basically pretends to be an inmate in the jail to get information out of someone who is in custody. And I am told that there was a Perkins operation involving Jake Haro, and as a result of that operation, they got information, the detectives, that Jake Haro had killed baby Emmanuel and had put, and it's awful to say, I mean, it's just awful, but had put baby Emmanuel into a trash can.
So I want to play something from the district attorney in this case, speaking to reporters earlier about the fact that they have a pretty strong idea of where they think baby Emmanuel is. Let's play that.
We have a pretty strong indication of where the remains of baby Emmanuel are. That investigation is ongoing at this time. The filing in this case reflects our belief that baby Emmanuel was abused, a victim of child abuse over time, and that eventually, because of that abuse, he succumbed to those injuries.
So two questions there. We have a strong indication of where the remains of baby Emmanuel are. How does that square with this story that police say Jake Haro told to, the plant in the jail that I killed the baby and threw the baby in a trash can?
Yeah, I mean, look, they must have some other information, because when they're saying that there's been a history of abuse, whether it's information from neighbors or from, who knows, videos or phones or pictures or whatever, where they have now put together a timeline that baby Emmanuel was abused over time. But it's also interesting, Ashleigh, that at that press conference, the DA was specifically asked, did you get a confession out of Jake Haro? And he said no, and he almost seemed mad about it, that they were asking about it, and he said no, which would conflict, you would think, with my reporting. And I just want to tell you, I've double, triple, quadruple checked. I stand by my reporting. I think we're down to semantics here, and in the legal world, a confession, there's a very, very strict definition of that. And I don't know what the DA's definition of confession is when it comes to what he would want it to be in a court of law, but I stand by my reporting when it comes to the Perkins operation and what resulted from that operation, Ashleigh.
It's hard to believe that they can make the statement, we believe that he was subject to abuse over time, and because of that abuse, he succumbed to his injuries. Does anybody know how they can say that, how they know, or how they can profess to know that this baby had been injured many times and thus died from all that sort of collection of injuries?
No, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. There may be more information that they were able to obtain from the operation in the jail that I just don't know about. Or, like I said, it's possible that it seems like they've been hard at work, these investigators. I mean, behind the scenes, they may have gotten evidence, again, neighbors, pictures, maybe there's medical records. I'm not sure, but they were very clear in their latest release that they believe that there's evidence of long-term abuse.
So now, if they're doing the Perkins operation on Jake Haro, did they do the same thing on Rebecca Haro in her jail cell?
Yes, that is what my sources say, that there was another Perkins operation for the mom, but a different outcome. I am told that she has stuck to the same story since the beginning, that there was a kidnapping, that her husband, Jake Haro, would never do anything wrong, that he was a good father, and she hasn't changed her story from what I've been told.
Still can't understand how she comes up with he's a good father, he'd never hurt a baby. He rendered his 10-week-old maimed for life and in need of constant care, blinded and unable to swallow due to the strangulation. So where Rebecca comes up with he'd never hurt a child, just look at the records and just look at the child that he did that to and served time for. Brian Entin, thank you for all of this excellent reporting. Really appreciate it. And like I said, break in if there's an update on Minneapolis.
You got it. Thanks, Ash.
All right, Brian Entin reporting live for us tonight out in Minneapolis. And as you just heard, the DA had a news conference today where he aired some thoughts about Jake Haro's past conviction that I just talked about for willful child cruelty. Oh, he'd never hurt a child. Willful child cruelty, a conviction. But the DA also talked about the judge in that case who did not send Haro to a long prison term.
In 2018, Jake Haro with his ex-wife, there's another child who they were prosecuted for child abuse as well, child neglect, cruelty. That child was also an infant, and that came to the courts, arrested in 2018, it came in to the courts in 2023. We had charged various felony crimes, child abuse, child cruelty, and our indication or what we wanted out of the case was prison. We believed it was a prison case and that Jake Haro should have gone to prison. I will say that it was an outrageous error in judgment by this judge. And I don't have any problem saying that. I'm not attacking the judge personally. That decision was absolutely outrageous. Mr. Haro should have been in prison at the time that this crime happened. And if that judge had done his job as he should have done, Emmanuel would be alive today.
Instead, Jake Haro was in jail for about 6 months. That's it. And then out on parole without even a hearing scheduled for months and months. Joining me now is somebody who knows this DA's office better than most. Kim Dagonia is a former Riverside County Deputy DA who's now in private practice. Kimberly, thank you so much for being on with me. Do you know any other details about this Perkins operation? Like, do you know if they used a law enforcement officer as the inmate plant, or did they use a jailhouse snitch as the inmate plant?
Hey, Ashley, thanks for having me. I don't know the specifics, the details of whether it was an inmate or whether it was an actual law enforcement agent undercover. What I do know is that I'm familiar with Perkins operations. I was in the homicide team for several years, and it's a common tool that Riverside County and counties across the state use in order to obtain information. And it simply is just an undercover person posing as another inmate trying to get the defendant to make voluntary statements. And from what Brian's reported, that there was a Perkins operation in this case, and from other, buzzes around town, it seems to be that is what happened in this case. But whether it was an actual officer or another inmate, we don't know.
And I'm going to get to why that's important in a second, but I want to get to the meat of what he said. Do you know anything else about what he said to that other quote-unquote inmate, other than I killed my baby and threw him in a trash can if the allegations are true? Was there any other detail? Was there any other information that came out in this conversation?
No, the information that I have is from the sources that Brian's reported from here on NewsNation, that it seems that there was another crime scene. I think Mike Hestrin confirmed that in his news conference today. Clearly the crime scene that happened on the weekend was not the actual crime scene. He made it very clear there's a strong indication they know where the body is, which leads one to believe that there's a strong indication they know where it's at. And that's the same information that I have received, that they are roughly aware of where the body is, but it's going to be hard to locate.
Okay, so if I put two and two together, what that means to me, Kim, is that that if he's telling the truth to the plant in the jail cell, and he did throw his own baby in a trash can, if that trash went out with trash collection, it would end up at a landfill. Do you have any inside information as to whether they've started searching local landfills?
No, I don't have any information as to whether they've began searching actual landfills. All I know is what Mike reported on today at the news conference, that they have a strong suspicion and indication of where they are looking. And we don't know if it was a statement made to somebody in the jail cell, if it was somebody after the Perkins operation. It's a lengthy process, this Perkins operation, so there's several different stages. So the incriminating statements that Jake made could have been anywhere along the process of this operation, the beginning while in the cell with the inmates, or it could have even been made possibly after to the investigators. We don't know, but we just know that statements were made.
Yeah, I hope that they pile a whole bunch more charges on him if the pictures we're seeing right now were just a big old wild goose chase for lying to the authorities, tying up all of these good men and women's time, energy, and resources on what may end up to be once again, a big fat lie. Last question, Kimberly, I only have 30 seconds left. The legal issues that stem from the Perkins operation. If it's a law enforcement officer that they put in there in jailhouse garb, who gets that admission, I won't say confession, I'll say admission, isn't that problematic if the defendant has already invoked his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent to authorities? Or does it matter because he's talking out loud to anybody and it might be an authority?
Right, that's exactly right, Ashleigh. This tool has been around since 1990. It came about in a Supreme Court case called Illinois v. Perkins, and that very issue was decided. When you are in a cell, you do not have a privacy right. So if you are voluntarily giving statements to somebody whom you believe is another inmate, those statements can be used against you if they're incriminating, and it looks like that's what happened in this case.
Even if what you believe isn't true, it's actually a law enforcement officer. Watch for this one. Kimberly DeGonia, thank you so much for being on. Really appreciate this.
Sure, you're welcome.
We are just getting started on this show, if you can believe it. It's a jam-packed night. After the break, a former Scientologist commits what the church considers a cardinal sin. She's laying into the church. And if you find what she says shocking, wait until you hear who she is. Here's a hint. She calls the leader of the church Uncle David. Don't miss our conversation. It's next. And then later on, we brought you the jaw-dropping story last night of an 11-year-old Oklahoma girl who was allegedly impregnated by her own stepfather and then forced to give birth in the family's squalid and very crowded home. Well, as it turns out, there's now another member of the family who's pregnant. We've got all the details ahead. Organized religion, like every other organization in human history, has rules and structures and true believers and malcontents and, of course, secrets. Your neighborhood churches and synagogues, mosques and temples, each in its own way is a mystery to the people on the outside, but none is as big a mystery and as fiercely protective of its secrets as the Church of Scientology. It bills itself as a gateway to self-improvement, a beacon of spiritual enlightenment. And for its thousands or tens of thousands or millions of dues-paying members, the true number isn't really clear, it may well be. But for many of its former members, some of whom have left the church after decades, it was something else entirely. They describe an empire built on control, intimidation, and silence. Some people who have left the church allege human trafficking, forced labor, and physical and psychological abuse, families even ripped apart. The church, for its part, denies all of it, consistently and vehemently, and sometimes in court. And the church continues to thrive, in part because of its members that the whole world knows, like Tom Cruise, for instance, and John Travolta, and Elizabeth Moss, and of course, Leah Remini, who left the church and is now one of its highest profile critics. Remini made it her mission to solve a big mystery about the church, the whereabouts of the wife of the church's leader, David Miscavige. That wife is Shelly Miscavige, and she hasn't been seen in public since 2007. But both the church and the LAPD say she is alive and well. And now comes another Miscavige, David's niece, Jenna, with a jaw-dropping series of new TikTok videos exposing what she calls the church's darkest secrets, and a hint as to where Shelly Miscavige actually might be. Here's a sample.
My name is Jenna Miscavige. My uncle's the leader of Scientology, and I escaped when I was 22. I grew up believing we were all immortal spiritual beings who inhabit our bodies, and we pick up a new one each time our last body dies, and that as spirits we had become too dependent on and trapped inside our bodies, and that in our native state we are all powerful godlike beings with superpowers. The first time I was attached to one of these, I was 4 years old. Scientology taught us that it sent a small electrical current through our body, which they believe was influenced by our mind. You're attached to it by holding two cans. Scientologists say they can help you by finding your ruin in life and fixing that, but that's just a hook to get people in. Once people joined, their ruin didn't matter anymore, compared to the mission of saving all mankind.
Earlier today, I spoke with Jenna Miscavige about all of the things that she's saying and why, in the face of serious pushback, she's saying them.
I think after spending several years raising my young children, and in the last couple of years, I've just become re-inspired to start talking about Scientology again by certain YouTube channels and TikTok channels. There's Growing Up in Scientology, Streets LA, where they actually go in front of Scientology recruitment centers and they stop people from joining Scientology. And just watching them talk to young kids and sort of wishing that those people had been around when I was in Scientology, living in the building of the recruitment center, had a big impact on me.
You've mentioned in your TikToks, and so far there's only 13. I mean, it is just literally brand new, this profile of yours. But you've mentioned that you believe that the Church of Scientology employs an Office of Special Affairs that you say is just dedicated to shutting down people like you, to coming after people like you. And I think in one of the TikToks you mentioned they have almost private investigators who might even set up across the street from your house or even move in. Are you fearful of any of those tactics that you've laid out in some of your TikToks?
It has been happening since I left Scientology. I believe that it makes me more safe to be speaking out about it. I feel like Scientology is the first people that, if anything happened to me, that people would suspect to be involved in some sort of foul play. So I feel comfort and safety in speaking out. But it's obviously not fun to be followed by private investigators. I mean, about this time last year, me and my boyfriend were followed by a private investigator. They actually wound up hitting the back of our car. And that part of it was an accident, but it's still just like insane that that's part of my life.
Has any of that ramped up in the last couple of weeks that you've launched this TikTok campaign?
Not in the last week. I've only been on TikTok for a week. So I think that Scientology changes its strategy where they'll make social media profiles and will try to troll you in the comments. And for past members, they try to create whole smear websites. So I think they do things like that, but it's like weird. In the past, they would follow people, and there's even like things where they would hurt people's animals or get involved with their employer and try to get the person fired, where now I feel like it's a new era and they're doing new things, but I'm aware of it and prepared for it. And I just have to brace myself for that to happen.
listen, Jenna, as the niece of David Miscavige, obviously this is how you start every TikTok. My name is Jenna Miscavige. I'm David Miscavige's niece. He's the leader of Scientology. You're a very, very high profile critic of the church, like Leah Remini, another very high profile critic of the church who is breaking through the mainstream. Do you think this is sort of the dam breaking and that more people may end up doing what you're doing? If the things you're saying are true, I can only imagine people are sort of waiting for people like you to pave the way.
Yes, I think so. Initially, speaking out about Scientology was very dangerous, but now people can find their own platforms on TikTok and YouTube, and there is safety in numbers and in corroboration.
Some of the safety that you refer to makes me think of one of the 20-year-long stories of a very prominent Scientology member seemingly going missing, and that's Shelly Miscavige, David Miscavige's wife, your Aunt Shelly. A lot of people think that she vanished and maybe there's foul play, but you don't believe that.
Right. Yes. I don't believe that Shelly is missing. I believe that she's a member of a cult. And so by nature of being in a cult, you're sort of isolated from the outside world. But Shelly is somebody who has been with my uncle since since he became the leader of Scientology, since the first day. Now, she was never somebody who spoke at Scientology events as like a public speaker, like many other executives were. She would, go on outings with my Uncle Dave and talk to celebrities, and, they would fly in private planes, they would wear designer suits. So she lived a life of luxury, but she was not a public Scientologist who addressed all Scientologists. So I believe that they had a falling out, but now she works at a Scientology base in Twin Peaks, California. And at that base, they basically, it's kind of crazy, but they put Scientology scripture onto titanium plates so that they can survive nuclear holocaust. Anyways, it's like a very secretive, special job, but she has been seen eating at local restaurants, going out to see Marvel movies, and seen at the chiropractor. So she's there of her own choosing.
And I should say that, David Miscavige hasn't been charged with anything. Shelly Miscavige hasn't been charged with anything. I think there have been perhaps upwards of 2 missing persons reports that have been filed. One of them, I think, by Leah Remini. What happened to those reports? Like, why is it that there's not more outcry? Where is Shelly Miscavige? Were they unfounded? Did the police investigate? Where do they stand?
I mean, I think that there is so much outcry about where is Shelly Miscavige right now, which I think is really sweet that people care. And it actually has raised so much awareness about Scientology. But yes, the missing report was filed by Leah Remini. The police did check on her. There was some debate about whether or not they actually saw her. I actually don't know. The thing is that Leah saw her and then filed a missing persons report many years later, and like 8 years later or so. So Leah Remini wasn't somebody who's in her life who would really be entitled or likely to see her. And so there's only so much that the police can do with that. But the police said that they did meet with Shelly, and I have my own sources who I trust who have seen Shelly in the last couple of months. And without giving away my sources, like that's all I can say. But yes, she is alive and well. And I don't want to say everything is great in her life because she's still in a cult, and that's not great for anybody, but that's where she chooses to be. She's an adult, and unfortunately, there's a limited amount of things that can be done about that right now.
But still to come, Jenna ain't done yet. Up next, the unexpected ways that she says her former church, the Church of Scientology, could be trying to recruit you right now without you even knowing it. That's next. Many churches, maybe all churches, evangelize, which is to say they preach the gospel and they try to recruit new members. So when I sat down today with Jenna Miscavige, whose uncle David Miscavige is the leader of the Church of Scientology, I asked how Scientologists recruit new members. And if you caught our last segment, you know that Jenna is now a former Scientologist and outspoken critic who has just begun a new TikTok account posting tell-all videos about what she says were her experiences with the church. Here's more of our conversation. There was another TikTok that I saw of yours that was so fascinating, in which you lay out what you say are the recruitment techniques of Scientology, and lest anybody watching right now thinks it's, somebody handing out flyers on the street, which is sort of easy to spot. It is far different than that. It's organizations, you say, they've launched that don't look at all like church organizations. Can you expand on that?
Yes, absolutely. So Scientology has a whole division that's dedicated to getting new people in. And in these divisions, they basically orchestrate all kinds of front groups. It can be Narcanon, which is basically a drug rehab facility that is completely uses Scientology processes, techniques, but they try to secularize it. They try to say it's not Scientology, that it's a social betterment group. But if you see the name L. Ron Hubbard, it is a Scientology organization. So they have the same thing for Criminon, where they insert themselves into prisons and turn prisoners into diehard believers, and who then become recruiters and wind up in Scientology. They have Youth for Human Rights, which is a group that is avidly against psychiatry. Scientology believes psychiatry is like the most evil thing in the world. And so it's so ironic because they have these human rights groups while they're actually like enslaving kids, covering up sexual abuse, and really that how they are against psychiatry and psychology, they actually prevent their members from getting real mental health help that they need. And
they also have acting classes, I think you mentioned, to try to, in your allegation, that they try to get actors who may end up becoming very high profile, who are very valuable to them.
That's right. They have a whole celebrity strategy, and they even have their own policies written on this, where they create celebrity centers around the world. But obviously the one in Hollywood is the most, it's like the most famous one. Yes, prolific. And they have, acting class. They have Scientologists who run acting classes, and they basically wind up recruiting people into Scientology. And people think that by going to the celebrity center that they will make connections that they need in order to get their big break and that sort of thing. And it's really just a way for them to get people in early on and then be able to take credit for their success. Because what better way for them to promote Scientology than to be like Tom Cruise, John Travolta, all of these amazingly successful people who look heroic? They're Scientologists. So if it's working for them, then,
To that point, I wonder, you've got tens of thousands of questions that people leave in your TikToks, people asking you to do a TikTok on this question. And I wondered what the most common question is, because in my mind, I imagine it's people asking about Tom Cruise, but is Tom Cruise one of the most popular questions, and the background and the story behind Tom Cruise, or are you hearing other things?
Well, the biggest question was, where's Shelly? And I would say the next biggest question is like, what do Scientologists believe? But yes, people do ask about Tom Cruise, but I think that what do Scientologists believe is sort of in that same arena, because I think on some level they're hearing me say how I was treated as a kid, how I was part of Scientology's core organization that wasn't allowed to have kids. So they're like, how comes Tom Cruise is allowed to have kids? And so I actually had to do a TikTok explaining the differences why I wasn't allowed to, the different levels of Scientology, where I was a part of their dedicated group called the Sea Org, where I signed a $1 billion year contract. Where
$1 billion with a B.
Yes, with a B, where I promise my soul lifetime after lifetime of servitude to Scientology. I'm not allowed to have kids. We lived communally, we worked communally, 15-hour days, 7 days a week, little to no time off, $50 a week. And they're kind of like, well, how come we see Tom Cruise? He's the Scientologist, he's in movies and stuff. How does that add up? And so I think explaining those different levels helped people to see that there's different levels of Scientology.
As I recall in your TikTok, I think you said there's Sea Org, which was the one that you were a member of, where you were not allowed to have kids. And then there was staff members, and then there were the public level, and that Tom Cruise is a member of the public level, where you're allowed to sort of live fairly normally.
That's right. Yeah, you're allowed to have a regular job, live in the outside world. You're allowed to marry somebody who's not necessarily a Scientologist and make your own money. But that being said, you're usually in Scientology circles. The person who you marry is usually going to become a Scientologist. So look out, Anna de Armas. And also, you tend to work in Scientology circles. Like Scientologists tend to work together and hire other Scientologists. So being expelled for them is a big deal too. But they actually at least have some options where if you were born and raised in the Sea Org with no education, like I never really had contact with anybody who wasn't a Scientologist until the year before I left. So I was like afraid of regular people. So at least they have some options, but still, it still sucks.
You know, Jenna, it's interesting. I, as a television journalist, I have to say constantly, these are your allegations, and some of this hasn't been proven to me, or at least I haven't seen evidence of that, or there's no police report. But I will say this. One of the last stories that I did on NewsNation about Scientology yielded phone calls to my personal cell phone from mysterious people with the Church of Scientology wanting to have a chat, which I found very disconcerting because every other topic that I cover does not yield that kind of permeation into my personal life. And I did find it to be very disconcerting. And I did tell the person on the other end of the line, I will report this. And here I am reporting it again. So it's not a very good strategy if that's what they thought would be a good strategy to mute the media coverage. My thanks to Jenna Miscavige for that. I do want to say this, that again, I'll repeat, these are Jenna's accusations. They are not proven. There are no charges against people in the Church of Scientology about the things that she has said. But as... Wow. Where do I start? The church's response. We reached out to the Church of Scientology early today, asking them to come on so that they could respond to what Jenna was saying. And they refused our offer to come on the air, but then they called our network multiple times. And when I say multiple, the desk lost count at 8. They called twice during this show. They changed voices, a woman's voice with apparently a man's voice whispering in her ear. It sounded like on the other end. Then 29 minutes to showtime, which is really tight when you're on a live news program, they sent a statement demanding that we read the entire statement. Well, that's not how news works. We offered the opportunity to come on the air and have an entire segment, but you cannot produce our show and you can't write a script. And I have to say some of the things that were said in the statement are libelous. I can't even read them, the things that the Church of Scientology say about Jenna and her boyfriend and all sorts of things. So let me just read some of the things, though, that they said in the statement that they sent to us. The Church of Scientology says the following. She contradicts herself over and over in her videos, usually within sentences of each other. She offers no evidence of the false and outlandish claims she makes because there is none. Statement goes on to say that Ms. Miscavige Hill was expelled from the church 22 years ago for misconduct and attributes her recent actions to, quote, animus against the church. Well, there you go. Okay, I am going to tell you this, that our conversation is going to continue tomorrow with some other accusations that Jenna is making about how Scientology has a take on children in the church. She says that the church believes children are just adults in small bodies and that hard labor and racy conversations are all fair game when it comes to kids. So tune in for that, and also make sure you check out Jenna's book, Beyond Belief, My Secret Life Inside Scientology and My Harrowing Escape. Coming up next, if I told you that Belcalis Almanzar took the stand today in Los Angeles, would you bat an eye? I didn't think so. Now, what if I told you that Cardi B strutted up onto the stand and said under oath, "Bitch lying"? Think I have your attention now? The rapper is defending herself against claims that she scratched and spat on a security guard in 2018. I will tell you what else she said about the female guard, and it is only slightly safe for work. That's next. Thought you might want to see Cardi B on the witness stand telling the whole world that she did not scratch or spit on a female security guard. 7 years ago. Take a listen.
You invading my privacy, and now we're like chest to chest practically. So I keep telling her, like, you need to back up. And you telling me, how you telling me to leave? I came to see a doctor. You following me. You're recording me. I'm just trying to check my cat. You're recording me.
Security guard is seeking monetary damages in that case. And still ahead tonight, as if an Oklahoma family saga couldn't get more appalling. Their 11-year-old daughter gives birth at home, and police say the DNA of the newborn matches the 11-year-old's stepfather. And now comes word she's not the only one in the home who's pregnant and about to give birth. Details next. Follow up now to one of the more depraved stories to cross our desks in a while, an 11-year-old child who'd given birth at home. But that wasn't even the worst part of the story out of Oklahoma. DNA shows the newborn's father, Dustin Walker, is the father. He's the stepfather of the girl who gave birth, and now he's charged with child sexual abuse. Child's mother, Sherry Walker, is charged with enabling child sex abuse. The child's grandmother is selling a theory that the father of the newborn is instead a 12-year-old from the neighborhood. And tonight we're learning that the 11-year-old girl is not the only family member recently pregnant in that household. The 11-year-old's mother, the one they arrested, is also pregnant and apparently close to giving birth, which would make her daughter younger than her own granddaughter. That mother is in jail, so when her baby is born, child's likely going to join her 6 other kids who were removed to foster care. And that's because in addition to the sex charges that she and her husband are facing, they're also facing 6 counts of child neglect. Authorities say the kids were living in deplorable conditions, which a neighbor now says she reported multiple times to no avail. Bond for both of them, $1 million. That's it for tonight, everyone. Cuomo starts now.